Why would people kill Jesus so brutally?
Why would people kill Jesus so brutally? And they did kill him in a really brutal way. The cross was one of the most brutal ways that we can imagine for somebody to die. It was pretty horrible. It was, well, not pretty. It was absolutely horrible. In fact, even back then when it happened, almost everybody said, yeah, that's the worst way to die. So why would people do that to Jesus? Probably the best way to understand it is just this. Well, there's probably a couple things. Number one, in the ancient world, people were pretty brutal. Sin really had a control, not just of each individual, but it had control of society. And even in Jewish society, where they had learned a lot of the rules of God's, God's creation and how God wanted us to live, they still, honestly, they still lived in a pretty brutal society. And so they were more kind of inclined towards brutality maybe than we are today in the modern world, because the modern world today has been deeply influenced by Christianity. Okay, we live in a world right now that has a lot of the ways we think about what's right and wrong and what's good and bad. It's been shaped by the Bible. It's been shaped by our understanding of who Jesus is, okay? Because Jesus gives us the clearest picture of who God is and what we're supposed to look like as we're following him. So we live in a society that's not nearly as brutal as it was back then because they didn't have that history of following Jesus. But then the other thing is just this. For the Jewish people, what Jesus was claiming seemed like about the worst thing anybody could claim, because Jesus was claiming to be God. He wasn't claiming to know some things about God. He wasn't claiming to be a prophet. He wasn't claiming to, have some insight into what God was like. No, he was actually saying, I am God. And we know that because he did things like forgive sins that only God can do. And so they were like, you're not just crazy, you're like evil crazy. You're claiming to be God himself and you're misleading people. That's what they believed. But Jesus was telling the truth. He really was God, and we know that because God raised him from the dead 3 days after he died, okay? But for the Jewish people who didn't know that yet, what Jesus was claiming when he said that he was God seemed like the worst thing they could imagine anybody doing, and so they thought it made sense for him to die in the worst way imaginable. But Jesus was willing to do it because he loves you. Jesus was willing to die in that brutal way because of how deeply he loves you. And he wanted to pay off your sins so that you could be with him forever. Well, hey, thank you for watching. So glad to have you with us today. And by the way, if you're enjoying this content, would you do a couple things for us? Number one, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any content. Number two, would love for you to like and comment on this thing. That really helps us get the word out to other people. Also, you can help us get the word out by sharing this particular post. We'd love for you to do that. And we'd love to hear from you about questions you have. There's a link in the comment section to help you tell us your difficult question, and maybe we can address that in an upcoming episode.